But this year, another shift has been happening for many organizations that have continued allowing employees to work remotely beyond the pandemic.
Here come the employees back to work in the city. No more working from home.
Amazon is demanding its corporate employees return to the office 5 days a week,
forcing employees to come back into the office.
They're being ordered back to the office.
Welcome to the Future of Work Weekly Report, January 22nd, 2025. We're going to be breaking down the biggest shifts in the workforce today and continue to challenge the traditional way we think about work. Today's show, we're diving into the explosive return to office policies, or RTO, from some of the biggest companies in the world: Amazon, JPMorgan Chase, AT&T, and even the federal government under President Trump. And guess what? It's not all sunshine and productivity boost. In fact, it's causing a lot of headaches for employees. So let's go ahead and get into it with segment number 1, Amazon's RTO mandate and real estate cost. Let's kick things off with Amazon. It's a name that practically is synonymous with online shopping, but they're now creating waves with the RTO mandate. Wow. In January, Amazon rolled out a new requirement, 5 days a week in the office. The pushback from employees has been loud, and it's easy to see why. What's their reasoning for an RTO? Apparently, Amazon wants to reclaim some of that in-person collaboration magic that their CEO, Andy Jassy, claims is the key to the company culture. But hold on. What about the $1.5 billion Amazon spends on office leases? Seems like it might be a part of the story too, right? But the numbers don't add up. A survey by Yahoo Finance shows employees are frustrated with job satisfaction dropping. As we see from real estate reports, Amazon has a significant investment in office space, and executives seem eager to fill those expensive real estate commitments. And let's be real, when your HQ footprint is that massive, a little push to bring people back makes a lot of sense from a financial standpoint, just not from an employee happiness one.
According to the anonymous job review site Blind, 73% of Amazon workers are considering quitting in response. Blind polled over 2,500 verified Amazon professionals one day after Jassy sent out the RTO memo. Over 90% of Amazon's workers are dissatisfied with the company's new in-office policy, and a third said they know coworkers who have handed in their resignation because of the announcement. Fortune similarly found in its own investigation that employees are rage applying for new jobs and already interviewing for more flexible roles elsewhere. One respondent said she was hired during the pandemic with the understanding that there was no expectation to return to Amazon's offices. But last week, she was working from home when her husband forwarded her a link to the news. She told Fortune, quote, "At first, I didn't quite believe it. After all, who expects to get career-altering news from a news article instead of your employer?" Amazon CEO Andy Jassy has repeatedly warned remote workers that it's, quote, "not going to work out for them at the company." But experts previously told Fortune that Amazon's 5-day mandate is a negotiation game to get employees in the office for the 3 days it originally asked for. Whether Jassy's latest move is to make employees show their faces more frequently or not, workers have until January 2nd, 2025 to call his bluff, or quit. While Jassy positioned Amazon's changes as a better way to work, most of the disgruntled employees Fortune spoke to are adamant that it's a thinly veiled headcount reduction. And although some fear Amazon's new policy will influence the tech industry, research suggests most businesses are becoming more flexible, not less, and have even recently backtracked on their stance around working from home. Flex Index analyzed office requirements at more than 9,000 companies who collectively employ more than 100 million people. They found that around half of U.S. firms asked workers to return to the office last January, but that only a third have kept their strict 5-day in-office mandates in place. Now, 37% of employers offer hybrid working instead, up from 20% at the start of 2023. And separate research has echoed that CEOs in the tech industry especially have spent the last year backtracking on their RTO mandates. In August of this year, just 3% of tech firms were asking their workers to go into the office full-time, a significant drop from 8% last year.
Hate to tell you. The cat is out of the bag, but let's continue down this route with JPMorgan's recent 5-day RTO mandate announcement, right? Jamie Dimon, the longtime CEO, is also doubling down on their 5-day RTO push, but he's got a different angle. He's betting on productivity. In a recent statement to Yahoo Finance, Dimon said that the office is where the magic happens. So much so that he's adamant about bringing his employees back in full time, despite the mounting resistance. But let's take a look at the bigger picture. Recent studies suggest that a rigid RTO mandate doesn't necessarily boost productivity. In fact, Gallup and other employee engagement surveys show that the more flexible companies are, the happier their workforce and the higher their retention. We have to get real about these RTOs. Are they about collaboration? Are they about culture? Are they about productivity? Before we dive into that, let's go ahead and talk about Trump's executive order on federal workers. So we're switching gears a little bit, but stick with this. You probably saw the headline, right? If you didn't, here it is. Trump has signed an executive order directing federal agencies to terminate remote work arrangements and return employees to the office full-time. According to NPR, the order directs agency heads to make the shift as soon as possible, with exceptions as they see fit. It's a little bit bleak and vague there. Here's the kicker. Many of the workers who will be impacted by this already had flexible work arrangements that were negotiated in their union contracts. And let's not forget, a lot of these workers actually don't work remotely to begin with. 54% of the 2.3 million civilian federal employees already work full-time in person. Now, the key issue here is recruitment and retention. The American Federation of Government Employees points out that remote work arrangements are crucial for attracting top talent in both the private and public sectors. So the question is this mandate really about efficiency, or is it just more political grandstanding, especially when you consider that most government agencies have already seen efficiency increases with remote work? Again, you have to make it make sense.
Efficiency isn't really an outcome that DOJ's drive for forcing federal workers to return to the office is really going to generate. In fact, the research shows zero efficiency gains. Return to office mandates don't really result in performance improvements. There's been plenty of research that's been done around this. There's no financial impact that's been seen to date on this. There's not even a stock pop, as most people would expect. What does happen, though, is people quit. And it's not the slackers that Elon and Vivek think are going to quit when they're forced back into the office. It's actually women who are more often than not primary caregivers, and it's top performers, the people who are promoted more often, the people who are more tenured in an organization. They're the most likely to leave because they're the most marketable. So if you want to drive out your top performers, a return to office mandate is a great way to do it. The quiet part about an RTO mandate is it's a soft layoff. Look, when Amazon and Washington Post put this out there and said that we want people back in the office 5 days a week, they were asked a couple of times explicitly, is this trying to get people to quit? And the executives said, no, it's not about people quitting. But at the same time, they had other executives out there saying, but if you're not willing to come in the office 5 days a week, you should quit. Elon and Vivek basically just said the quiet part out loud. They said, our intention here is to get people to quit. We expect 25% of government workers to quit when they are forced back in the office 5 days a week. That's a soft layoff that is trying to drive people to leave without severance, as opposed to a hard layoff, which is getting people to leave and giving them a severance package.
Now, let's look beyond the headlines and get into the real reasons behind the RTO policies. What do companies like Amazon, JPMorgan, and now the federal government have in common? Besides the fact that they're all pushing for full-time office returns, they're all dealing with massive overheads related to real estate. According to Reworked, real estate costs are often a hidden driver behind these mandates. Companies like Amazon are locking into long-term leases in prime office space, and that space needs to be filled whether employees like it or not. Plus, let's face it, there is a control factor here too. CEOs like Diamond and Zuckerberg want employees in the office to ensure they're staying engaged and aligned with company's vision. But how much of this is about leadership genuinely believing in the benefits of face-to-face work? And how much is it about old school control tactics? Maybe they just want to have a clear view of their workforce physically. Maybe. But let's go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room. Employee resistance. It's not just about wanting to stay home in our PJs all day. Employees are legitimately concerned about their work-life balance, mental health, and their own productivity. According to Pew Research, 75% of workers report higher stress when they're forced to return to the office full-time. And data from Gallup shows that employees working remotely are 13% more likely to stay with their company for the long haul compared to in-office workers. It's clear. The RTO push is not about improving productivity. In fact, studies suggest remote-first companies are outperforming their in-office counterparts in many areas. The push for remote work is not just a trend. It's a strategy for better talent retention and engagement. Here's the kicker. Employee turnover and cost. According to Gallup, disengaged employees cost companies up to $2.1 million a year in lost productivity. Now, that's a big number. And companies like JPMorgan and Amazon that enforce rigid RTO policies are setting themselves up for turnover problems that will only escalate over time. In fact, Reworked reported that 60% of employees are unhappy with their RTO requirements, have said that they will look for a new job in 2025. That's a costly mistake for any company, especially when the remote work revolution has shown us that flexibility can drive both employee satisfaction and the bottom line. So, what's next? The battle for flexible work is far from over. We've seen the return to office pushbacks from major companies and government bodies. But let's remember the data. Employees want flexibility, and the companies that can adapt to their shift will win. The ones who ignore it, well, they might be signing up for a future of high turnover and disengagement. We're going to keep an eye on this as the battle unfolds. And as always, make sure to ask yourself, when it comes to the future of work, who's truly leading the charge? Is it the CEOs fighting for control or the workers demanding change? The answer will shape the workforce for years to come. And it's bigger than RTO. It's how we actually improve work. That's what we're focused on here. It's how do we improve work? For the employee, for the employers, for the users, all of them have to be encapsulated into how we act today so we can create a better future for tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Future of Work Weekly Report. Be sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon for updates, and stay tuned for next week's deep dive. See you on the next episode.